Welcome to Leadership Roll Call, where we give you tips, suggestions, and recommendations on how you can become a more effective leader. I'm your host, Michael Finley. And this episode is part 3 of a 4-part series on how to present to executives. In the previous episode, we discussed content and how to clarify your objectives. You can find that episode here. In this episode, we discussed the design of your presentation, how it looks. Now I realize the company you may work for may have a template or standardization that they require of you, and my job is not to override that. But there are some basic design tenets that I would like to relate to you. Let's start with the one thing that everybody hates, and that's bullet points. Unless you've discovered that your audience prefers that format, please limit the use of your bullet points. No one likes to see them. And if you put all your bullet points up at once, they're either going to read ahead and not focus on you, or they're not going to read them at all. So limit the use of your bullet points. Now, I'd like to show you some examples. Here you see a list of bullet points. Now, I've seen these in many presentations, and it's very boring. Now, you can make this list look better by using shapes, such as this. It's a little bit better than bullet points. Studies show that slides with visuals are much more effective than the ones with just text. So here's a representation where we're using visuals as well as a little bit of text. So you can see it's a little bit more engaging than the standard bullet points are. And one thing about text, if you do have text on your screen, the bigger the better. Now you don't want text so small that someone in the second or third or even fourth row can't see it. So you want to use as much as you can. You want to make this text as big as you can so that your audience can see it. Also, regarding text, there's 2 different types. There's serif and sans serif. Now, serif is good for if you're trying to write a book. You'll see that it has little flourishes on the end. I've shown some examples here. So you can see them, they're very common. You don't want to use these in a presentation because on a screen, it limits the clarity of what you can see. The type of font that you want to use in your presentation slides is what's known as sans serif, or sans meaning without, sans serif. And here's some examples of some sans serif fonts that you can use. Those are the best ones that you can use when you use text on a slide in your presentation. Now regarding fonts, let me add a couple of other things. Don't try to use a fancy font. Don't try to use Comic Sans or anything like that one. You don't want to get too cute. Just use one of those sans serif fonts and you're doing well. Now let's talk about images for a moment. If you can, use as most professional images as you can. No one wants to see blurry images or warped images or images with a watermark. That just screams that the presenter is unprofessional. You want to use as professional image as you can in your presentation. The same goes with clip art. Please, if you can, don't use clip art. Again, that just screams unprofessional. Next, let's talk about data. Now, data is good to use. It reinforces your message. We talked about in an earlier episode how you want to have supporting materials, and data is a great supporting material. But we want to be careful how we use data. I've seen some presentations where they just throw the entire Excel spreadsheet up on a screen, and the audience is trying to figure out what it is that you want them to see. So instead of using the entire spreadsheet, what you want to do is pull out the specific data that you want and put that instead on the screen. So here's an example of data that's been extracted and highlighted. It looks okay, but I think we can make it look better by just slightly changing this graph and showing it this way. In this graphic, we don't have to point out the best month in sales. The graphic does it for us. So when you're using data, just make sure that the audience will be able to understand it. Remember, simple is good. And again, with anything, you want to look at your slides and determine, is this slide necessary? Look at it, does this enhance my message or does it confuse it? Is it necessary? If it's not necessary, take it out. When you're giving a presentation, people came to hear you. You are the star of the show, not your slide deck. So if you have a complicated slide or a slide with too much information, that just confuses people. So make sure that your slides are designed well, that they're designed simple, and that they show the data or the message you're trying to convey. A good executive presentation can be done in as little as 10 slides. You just need to take out what's unnecessary and keep the good parts. You know, there's many books written on how to design a presentation, and I don't try to cover all that stuff here. But there are some simple things that you can follow to make sure that your design of your presentation enhances your message, and that's what we're trying to convey here. If you have a question or comment about this topic, please put it below. In our next episode, we're going to finish up our 4-part series with the delivery of the presentation. I'll see you then.